May I request all the speakers to come on the stage? They can take their respective seats. I request everyone to be seated if they are standing. I think we are about to start the session. I request all of you to kindly take your seats. All right, you go ahead, Will. First talk is by Smita, and the first talk is by Smita, then Luisa, and then Balaji, and then Shweta. So only we are switching that Smita's talk.
One second, sir. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Can you please look around if there is a missing bag, conference bag, something that is not yours. There is a bag, conference bag missing, which has a passport of one of the participants. So it's a kind request to please look around. Yeah. Also, please check your bags.
I think we can begin with it.
Okay. Okay. It's okay. No, I think I'm tall enough. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I call the House to order so that we begin our very important session? Okay, others will catch us along the way. You are meeting Dr. Keith Puri, I'm going to be moderating this particular session. We'll be looking at building awareness on environmental, social, and governance in a global context. So we will allow all the presenters to, in their order, in their sequence, they will make their presentation in about 8 minutes. All of them will present, and then after their presentation, we will then throw in some questions. So our first speaker will be Smita. Panda? Is Panda? Okay, all right. So she is the founder and CEO of Pandoro Technologies, a platform, I'm just reading out her profile, a platform that blends generative AI with expert consulting to help business integrate ESG frameworks and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. With a background in financial services, retail, banking, and utilities, Smita specializes in data analysis, risk management, and user experience. She is also an international speaker and a strong advocate for a diversity in tech, mentoring future women leaders. Her expertise has earned her global recognition, including an invitation to COP29 by the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub to present her work on the framework for measuring alignment of business to human needs. So she is going to take us on Capital for Change, ESG at the Crossroads. We will allow her to come to the podium. Let's clap hands for her as she does that. Thank you.
Sorry, I had to use a stool. All right, coming straight away to the topic for today, uh, which is ESG in transition, navigating global priorities, regional risks, and sustainable finance. What we are going to do is, uh, firstly, because I work with businesses and investors in the space of sustainability, to just quickly give you a background. In the business world, the term SDGs, while it is much loved and respected, the real term that they like to use is ESG. So what I'm going to do is start with those terms and build it in the global context. So capital for change is what I mentioned as my topic, which is more about, the world today is looking for moving towards a more sustainable development model. And for any such change, there are two components very much required. One is the intent to change, another are the resources. So when we say intent, we'll talk about the global priorities which specify our intent. And when we talk about capital, it is one of the huge resources, and I think it won't surprise anybody if I say we need capital to make a change. It's one of the biggest resources that we can deploy to make the change. Excuse me for the, of course, this is the agenda. We will talk about ESG in global context. We're going to very quickly touch the emerging global ESG priorities. We're going to look at a little bit on what is driving it in the regions and what are the challenges. And then we'll quickly move to sustainable finance as to what are the options, how it is moving today. Yeah. So again, excuse me for all the errors that you see in the slides. A lot of them are AI-generated pictures, so they'll have duplicates there. But I mean, that's just for beautification. I know everybody's looking at the slide, but maybe look at me. I'll talk better about it. ESG is environmental, social, and corporate governance on businesses, environmental impact and social impact of the business operations. We're trying to keep a little, maybe a step away from CSR, which is the corporate social responsibility, which is more philanthropic in nature, more like donations, charity. That comes secondary. That's a small part of sustainability. We are trying to talk about ESG, which is how does your value chain look like? How are you really, throughout your sourcing to distribution, how are you really impacting the environment, the planet, the society, the community, the individuals? So the things we're going to talk about, or probably when it is discussed for ESG, it is emissions, carbon emissions, climate action. You'll hear these terms. Then there will be, for the social parts, there will be labor laws, there will be human rights, how you're impacting the community. And from corporate governance standpoint, it's more about transparency, accountability of your actions. So that's what ESG, for at least from my business perspective, that's what it means, and that's how we look at it. Very quickly, there are very different drivers for moving these terms forward in today's world. Some of them are because of the changing regulations, growing regulations. Every country is coming up with their own set of regulations on ESG sustainability. They're coming up with their own set of disclosures. Then there is a growing importance given by investors for ESG, because maybe businesses have realized that the longevity and resilience of a business depends on how well they are managing their ESG also. The triple bottom line, if you must have heard, planet, and then prosperity and people, all three of them. And evolving preferences of consumers. The new consumers who are coming to this world are probably asking for, how sustainable the product is. When they go to buy a jeans, they want to look at the tag. When they're booking a flight, they want to see how much emissions this particular route, this particular flight does. So that's also a driver for moving ESG forward. We'll talk about the relationship of ESG with SDGs in just a few minutes. I'll probably skip it for now. Again, so there are these very, very global priorities, like very globally renowned priorities, which is climate action. You will hear it in every country, every city today, every forum, that there is work to be done around climate action. We have to really stop this climate change from going further worse. We have to try and reverse it. Then there are priorities for saving your biodiversity, protecting your natural capital, which is again a resource for bringing the change. Then there is a huge drive for corporate transparency, because a lot of capital, again, which is a precious resource, is deployed in projects which go bad, or deployed in projects which are bad for the planet or society. So the more you are transparent, the more it is easy for the society to judge it. Here is, yeah, these are some of the common global priorities that you'll see. There has to be an action on climate. There has to be businesses who have to be responsible for it. There have to be biodiversity and natural capital saving. Society has to be society has to be equitable. We have to fight the inequity. And SDGs was probably the last official global priority that all the countries signed together. After that, in 2015, I don't think there has anything been as an official framework that every country has signed up towards fighting climate change or towards bringing in sustainability. So that is a very, very global priority. ESG maps to it very beautifully. Almost all the aspects of environment and social map to SDGs very well. However, corporate governance is not something that's captured in SDGs very well, except for maybe a point here and there. Also maybe because the SDGs was initially formed for the governments. Not sure how much governments want to be accountable. But businesses, when they are translating these SDGs into ESG, then they do have this extra part of corporate governance they have to look into. Having said that, I added a picture of reality, that while SDGs are our global priority, we are all signed up to meet it, we are all working towards it. That's not what is happening today. If you can see what's happening, and we all will agree, there is no happy place today. That's, you can just say that this particular pocket of the world is happy and rest is not. There's no such place today. And I don't want to, again, bring up the numbers, but you can only imagine what happens with the emissions of a single bomb. And at one end, you force people to switch off lights when you're moving out. You force people, or not force, but encourage people to go to EVs. You're making a lot of changes. But at the other end, one single bomb can just ruin it all. The land which you are, the fertile land, that if you are adding too much of phosphorus by bombing to it, there is no food that will come up, there will be famine, there will be malnutrition, no access to good healthcare, no access to education, good education. If you're taking away that from people, then you may say this is a global priority, but actions are not supporting it. That was just a point to make here. Very quickly, the regional landscape. So moving from global priorities to the regional ESG landscape, there are different drivers which are driving ESG across various regions of the world. So mostly, for example, if you look at Europe, there are too many regulations coming up, and regulations are driving businesses to take up ESG. In US, it's a lot of investor-driven. In Asia, some part of it is growth with ESG. So people are looking at in Southeast Asia, there are some countries which are actually leveraging ESG for their growth. And in some parts, much like with Africa and Latin America, there's a climate vulnerability and development issues which for which we really need ESG to be there. So there are regions which are furthering ESG, but for their own reasons. However, because these regions are diverse in nature, there are different kind of challenges. There are countries which take 5 steps forward and then 7 steps backward on their policies. And we've known them. They participate on forums and then they take their names back, which means their commitment on policies is not stable. Then there are countries where there are no policies. Data availability and quality gaps are absolutely prevalent across the planet. The best way to look at it is if you look at the SDG index. So every country has its SDG index. When you look at the the indicators and the data around them, you'll see how much data is missing from there, which means we still can't say if we're doing good, not so good, and we only have 5 more years to go. Limited institutional capacity on whether it is funding capacity, whether it is aware educational capacity, you can't do it all because the need is huge. And then the transition risks coming from the emerging economies where there is a spectrum of economic economic power of even the consumers or the citizens, which means what you can ask one part of citizens to follow cannot be applied on another, which is a different kind of risk. And then the cultural and market differences, which again we'll touch very, very quickly in the next slide. So coming to the last part of it, which is the funding and sustainable finance. So while we have understood the global priorities, while we've understood that, yeah, regions are navigating it, there are drivers there, how are businesses really leveraging it, or what are the instruments which are helping businesses leverage it? There are, so ESG asset under management was projected to be over 53 trillion by 2025, which is very much happening. There are green bonds and climate funds, blended finance models. There is impact investors and development banks. And I'm going to very quickly show you this graph so you know that what I'm talking is true. Blended finance model, and how is it different from an impact investment? Impact investment is an instrument where, rather an approach to, a kind of fund which is clearly focused on impact and the changes it brings rather than the returns. Returns are good to have, but the focus is more on, changing or solving a problem. It's almost like a patient capital. They're going to get invested and stay there for a while to make that change, unlock the potentials there. Blended finance is more as an approach where it may be for impact, it may not be for impact, but all kinds of fund can be put into it, which is public money, which is philanthropy, which is concessional capital, which is private banks, which is any kind of investors, and all this money put together. That is the whole concept of blended capital, which is easier to use for making change, because then there are various parties involved, and some of them could bring in the return, some of them could actually bring in the change. Green bonds and climate funds. Bonds are issued for finance projects. So if you're doing, with environmental benefits, which is if you're issuing bonds for work around building nature, building forests, those are the kind of, or maybe protecting the biodiversity. There are bonds around it, or preventing emissions. There are bonds around it which are issued. Similarly, there are climate funds, which are investment. I'll just take 2 minutes, yes. Investment funds intended to support climate change mitigation and adaptation, which is, there could be certain projects which would be common between the two, but the intents are a little separate too. So if you want to really unlock the ESG capital for the businesses, we have to put, literally standardize so many platforms and frameworks which are coming up for disclosure to make it easier for businesses to really come at a global platform and say, yes, these are the good businesses, because the investments today are global. Similarly, ESG ratings, all of them have to be standardized a bit. We need to leverage carbon markets, the carbon credits. We need to increase the role of multilaterals, the development banks, and of course, policy incentives to be given. Because every kind of business, if you see, has a different driver. And to meet the needs of those different drivers and different size of businesses, we need to have different kind of investments and different kind of help to be done there. Finally, where are we today? So there is a parallel universe coming up. While there are traditional investors, traditional products, traditional marketplaces, traditional consumers who waste, there is a new market coming up. There is a new set of investors coming up, new set of consumers coming up, and a new marketplace being built where people are thinking about recycling, making less waste, and actually consuming products which are more organic. What's next? And this is literally my second last slide, so yeah, we'll be wrapping up in a minute. The next is we are going to see a lot of localized ESG frameworks which are global. We're going to see integration across value chain, which means you're going to make responsible businesses, responsible investors. We're going to have a lot of collaboration on finance and disclosure, which means you will have to talk it out with all kinds of stakeholders and disclose to them whether they're employees, investors, community, and skill development, which is probably something a lot of you can actually contribute to. We need people who understands ESG. And well, these are the recommendations very clearly as per the last slide that we talked about. The next steps, I'm not going to repeat them again. But one thing that I really want to talk about here is the ESG park. How about I leave you with this thought? Could we actually have our real estate, whether it is institutions, whether it is co-workings, whether it is office spaces, whether it is schools, be ESG park where no waste goes to the landfills, emissions, every space is called as ESG park. I mean, I'm a businesswoman, I could give ratings on it, but yes, if everybody could come together and build such, we have those SEZ parks where you get export incentives. We have such, industrial parks. We could have an ESG park where businesses would not have to really take the burden of integrating ESG on themselves. Maybe it could be a shared burden. Thank you so much. If you have any feedback, questions, I'm around. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita, for your detailed and meticulous presentation. I'm sure on the floor we are capturing some key questions or some points that we want to raise when we go to the question and answer session. So let me quickly jump to the second speaker for the sake of time. I will read her profile here. Luisa Maria is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Mississippi and a permanent professor at the graduate program of ecology at the Federal University of Bahia, Brazil, and a collaborator professor at the graduate program of zoology at the State University of Santa Cruz, Brazil. She is the chair of the Brazilian chapter of the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, vice chair of the Brazilian Association of Ecological Science and Conservation, co-founder and chair of the CUNA as a network of women in science, and a council member of the European Society for Evolutionary Biology. So she's going to take us on for her presentation, and please, our speakers, let's stick to 8 minutes. I hope she will also manage. Let's give her a hand of applause as she comes through to make her presentation, Building Global ESG Awareness. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? No? Okay, perfect. Well, it's my pleasure to be here with you today. What I am presenting is this guiding question here for you. So how can environmental, social, and governance strategies be sustainable and inclusive across diverse cultural, ecological, and political contexts? So this is not a theoretical provocation. This is a challenge based on lived experiences I have as an ecologist that works in the interface between science, traditional knowledge, and decision-making. So what I am presenting to you here is that, well, we have global challenges, as Mita just presented to you, and those global challenges are a wicked problem. What does that mean? A wicked problem is a problem that has different types of solutions that not always serves all the stakeholders involved. So a wicked problem carries colonial legacies driven by ecological and knowledge injustice, and one-size-fits-all strategies usually risk deepening inequalities and risk actual solution that actually fit the global challenges we face now. So when we talk about developing solutions for these global challenges, we need to think about ways of meeting those different environmental and social challenges that are affecting not only us in the cities, but also the traditional communities and also the biodiversity and also the whole ecosystem. So natural and human systems are being affected, and when we discuss about solutions, we need to include in the discussion the different stakeholders, the different actors that are actually involved in the effects of those challenges. So science must transform to meet global environmental and social challenges. In this sense, what we have is that currently environmental science is based on traditional and colonial knowledge. So we don't actually include traditional knowledge in our decision making. We don't actually include the experience from different actors in our decisions towards those challenges. And that basically exclude all the experience and all the things that those people also have in their own culture, in their own local environment. So we need to mobilize different scientific knowledge and traditional knowledge to actually make it happen, make the change happen. So in this sense, we need to bridge knowledge gaps. And for that, we need to communicate, we need to have dialogue between academic and indigenous knowledge and also other types of traditional knowledge. So we can actually develop some solutions that are effective to all the different stakeholders involved. Here I am just showing a little bit of one of the activities I do, one of the communication I do. So this is one of the projects I am leading for the last couple of years. We visit the traditional communities back in Brazil and also in other countries in Latin America. So I'm involved with Maya community in the Guatemala, and also indigenous and Quilombola communities and riverine communities in Brazil. So we can develop together solutions for their local challenges that are driven by global changes. So I will be presenting a little bit of that later in my lightning talk if anyone has 3 minutes to hear about it. So when we think about those social environmental issues, we need to think about transdisciplinarity. We need to mix those different knowledge. So that is part of my article at the GYA Connections this year. So if you want to check more about this paper, it is in our recent publication. We can always fit the different SDGs into inter and transdisciplinary approaches. So these are some examples of how can we do that. For example, for climate action, in an interdisciplinarity view, we can mix our knowledge between climatology, ecology, economics, engineering, and other scientific knowledge, so we can develop solutions scientific based. And in a transdisciplinary approach, we can mix climate governance, community-based and ecosystem-based adaptation, sustainable urban planning. So those are essential for us to actually develop solutions considering climate action. And we have that for all different SDGs. We can always try to make it transdisciplinary, not only scientific based. So the take-home message is that we have a planetary crisis right now, and we can use this moment to take action. So this you can also find online is a recent paper that we published in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution about 6 actions that we as scientists and as stakeholders into our this challenge that we are facing, things that we can do. So we need to explicitly recognize and address this global crisis into our research. So prioritize actions to address this crisis as a core part of our scientific work. We need to explore positive futures. So when we communicate about the challenges, we cannot just talk about the issues, but we need to focus on the solutions. And we can develop solutions. We have solutions. So we should focus on that as well. And those solutions must be co-developed with other stakeholders, not only into the scientific environment. We need to defend academic freedom. We are living a period that is really hard for some of us and in different countries. So we need to defend, to ensure open, uncensored scientific communication and protect the critical environmental data, which has been threatened in the recent times. We need to go political. We cannot just step aside and ignore what is going on. So we need to abandon the myth of neutrality into the scientific environment and engage with the political dimensions of science and engage with politics and engage with the decision makers. We need to address colonial legacy. So faster and inclusive and equitable scientific community needs to integrate and promote indigenous and traditional knowledge. And for instance, we also need to inspire society. So we need to lead by example. We need to align our personal and institutional practices with transformations we demand from the world. So thank you, and I am open to questions afterwards.
Thank you, Louise, Maria, for such a very detailed presentation, and I notice the emphasis on indigenous knowledge systems, the emphasis on interdisciplinary, the emphasis on joining politics and inspiring society in our SDG. These are very critical issues as well. In fact, I think you also raised my academic test buds, because I'm also into indigenous knowledge systems. I think we need to have a private after this conversation, of course, but thank you for that good presentation. I'm sure as the floor, we are also will want to raise questions or contribute during the question and answer session. So let's keep the questions, let's keep them on. And then after the final speaker has spoken, we'll then give it over to the floor so that we hear even from the floor what we have. So without much further ado, let me go to the third speaker. The third speaker is apparently an industrialist coming from the industry side. So Balaji, your profile, he has been a director engineering at Carrier since 2014 and has over 25 years of experience in product design and R&D and systems engineering across HVAC, fire safety, and industrial automation. He has successfully led global teams of 130 plus, championed model-based system engineering and driven innovation with over 300 patent applications from his center, including 4 personal filings. Previously at GE Energy, he led controls, COEs, and major strategic initiatives. Balaji holds an MTech from BITS Pilani and additional credentials from IIM Bangalore and ICFAI. So his presentation will focus on roadmap to net zero for HVACR industry. Welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, all. Let me jump into the presentation. So this is going to be from industry perspective. You all know Carrier is today into the space of heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration. So predominantly, we play in the space of buildings. So that's going to be my focus area today. What is it, the contribution of buildings as a space into sustainability, and what is it in a Carrier is focused upon. So this is a short agenda, so I'll just move on to the next slide just to save on some time. So when we study, the buildings, buildings contribute to the major energy consumption when we look at across the globe, whether it is commercial building or residential building. Roughly around 40% of energy consumption of the world happens through the buildings. You peel one layer, go one layer deeper, what contributes within the building, that comes as a HVAC. That's a heating as well as cooling. In India, basically in the hotter part of the world, we predominantly talk about cooling. But if you go to the, look at the global view, heating also plays a major role as a necessity. Roughly around 40% of our energy consumption in a building happens from a HVAC as an equipment, right? So we are in that space. So the Carrier, when he's looking at the kind of products we have, over 2 million houses in North America alone, and the number of installations we have. So we contribute, to our products is in the space of greater than 50% of greenhouse emissions, in that space, right? So our products contribute to that. So we have a critical and pivotal role in addressing that challenge around sustainability. Some stats, the stats, could be varying everywhere, but the fundamental crux in this slide is, if you look at roughly around 2.5 to 3 billion population living in the hotter parts of the world, the penetration of air conditioning or the heating, and cooling solution or products is less than 15%, today. I'm just putting a higher number, though this slide talks about 8, right? Different, stats. So the need or the demand is going to, exponentially increase. So that is going to add a huge demand of energy and, cause, huge, emissions from the products in use, as well as the refrigerants are going to be causing a lot more cost to the sustainability. So that's the stat. So the way Carrier looks at, we look at is, hey, we are responsible, and connecting to the point which Smita talked about, the intent and action matters. But we are starting with, hey, acknowledging that we got to be responsible to this world. So with that, we started a new pivot in our company starting yesterday is, we want to be a more caring company for the world. Our, the focus of the strategy is also shifting towards, enhancing the lives and the world we share, right? So, caring for the world we share. So that's, the new tagline in which we are approaching. As I flip through the slide, right, and then, that's what, this slide talks about. As a HVAC or industry or a player, it is important, the companies, should set aggressive goals for themselves, not just in, making the product more efficient, but there's a holistically a lot more actions we need to do and come out with, more sustainable products, and also help develop, aggressive standards and codes and regulations, which will help, the world become more and more sustainable, right? So that's the, role in which, we are, coming with. As a company, what is it we are committed? We are committed to reduce 1 gigaton of emissions by 2030 for our customers. That is in our product in use. But the most aggressive target is like by 2050, we want to be in a net zero as a company from all aspects, right? So, from scope 1, 2, as well as 3. So that's our commitment. And the reason why this commitment is, the data, when we looked at, if Carrier continues the same way with our, products and, focus for another 10 years by 2030 as well as 2050, we would have contributed roughly 3 billion gigaton of, emissions to the world. So just by simply increasing the efficiency of the product as well as changing the refrigerant is not going to help 100% to become a net zero company. So that, is the, way in which we are looking at. So that's, bringing in, hey, when we look at the building as a space, what all is contributing to the emissions, today. The example is a residential building, but the same similar concept is applicable to commercial building as well. So, the fuel, electricity, and refrigerant are primary contributors, but what is it, the solution or the way to address, at a building level, right, is going to be definitely electrification is a major theme that roughly contributes to, 45% of the solution towards net zero. The second is, interconnecting and making more digitally enabled connected solutions. So that will help in optimizing the energy consumption, operations, and also, making it, more seamless at a building level for the customers, right? So that contributes to more than 30% of, value towards net zero. Then of course refrigerant and the sustainable materials. So this is the 4-way in which, Carrier is approaching. The subsequent slide also talks around the same thing. How are we, marching towards net zero by 2050? We are committing and validating our methodology of our calculations, as well as how we are going to meet our commitments in every 5 years and 2030 and most importantly 2050 as a net zero company. It is validated and approved by the SBTi as a methodology and organization. So that's where this is my last slide. I'm just trying to be within the time. So there are a lot more programs and projects and actions we are driving while we create more awareness within the company as well as outside the company, whether it is our partners, customers, and the general public. Feel free to ask any questions or connect with me. Need to more about what Carrier is doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your elucidated presentation on how really industries are, are creating problems for climate change as well, and also making suggestions on how they can reduce their carbon footprint. And maybe at a personal level, maybe I'll throw it to you later on, how biochar is the use of biochar as a way of reducing, the carbon footprint. How popular is it, especially when we're looking at greening the buildings or greening infrastructure? In some countries, I know biochar has become a rallying point or a strategy to reduce carbon footprints. So I will maybe throw this to you. I would love to know how that kind of technology is also part of the ESG strategy among different continents as well. So that is my own personal one that I'm throwing to you. I would love to hear your opinion on that one. Thank you. And then our final speaker for this particular session, and allow me to introduce you to her, to the floor here. Shweta, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it well. Forgive me if not. Is faculty in environmental sciences and associate dean, international affairs at Central University of Jammu and Kashmir, and adjunct faculty at Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Madras, Tamil Nadu, India. Her groups works in the field of aerosols, air quality, human health, and climate. She is also heading the Himalayan High Altitude Atmospheric and Climate Research, H2A2CR, Center in the Himalayas. Prof. Yadav, as nodal faculty for Jammu and Kashmir under National Clean Air Program, is working closely with policymakers and pollution control board to achieve clean air goals in the Himalayan region. So she is going to be taking us on India's ambitious climate and clean air goals, converging energy through an ESG lens. Let's give her a hand as she comes to present. I think for me, I'm tall enough, that's why I'm not using this. I'm vertically advantaged here, so we'll allow her to get over on board, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for a very nice introduction. At the outset, I'm very thankful for this opportunity. I can understand post-lunch sessions are really difficult, but bear with us, I'm the last one. So the stage is already set. I'm very delighted to be here off and on the dais, wonderful people. So very quickly, I'm going to touch upon India's ambitious climate and clean air goals converging and emerging through the ESG lens, because I am an atmospheric scientist and I have been closely working for the clean air goals in India. So I'm going to take through the journey of ESG goals and evolution of ESG in India, and what are the current challenges which have already been discussed, however, at the floor. So we all know that ESG came from this report, Who Cares Wins 2004, but I personally believe that ESG terminology is slightly new, but we have been following it for so long in different terminologies and the different heads. When we talk of ESG governance, it brings transparency, responsibility, fairness, accountability, and of course, it takes care of all the stakeholders. And of course, the robust ESG practices, as the industry people also said, and other speakers have already said, that it improves risk management capabilities, better operational efficiencies, stronger stakeholder trust, and of course, it builds long-term resilience, which is very, very important for all of us. If we look back, watershed years for ESG started from way back from 1972, and we started it way back in Stockholm Conference, and then all those years were there where we were building trust for coming up with an ESG framework globally, and India as well. And when we talk of national governance in India, our ancient scriptures are very much a significant source for ESG framework. If we go back to Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Vidu Niti, Arthashastra, all these talk of the ESG framework, which we are actually evolving up with now. And when we talk of evolution of ESG, we started with CSR activity. We all know the scientific community, the SSR activity. So, and by SEBI, the business responsibility and sustainability report was there. And then in UN Climate Summit in Glasgow in 2021, we have committed the net zero goals. Then Green Credit Program by MOEFCC, greenwashing, and it all leads to the 6th largest issuer of GSS plus bonds by India in Asia Pacific region. So we are transforming well, we are evolving well for the ESG framework in India. And why I'm talking about the climate and clean air goals, because we have been working towards it. And when we talk of the decarbonization targets, inclusive growth, environmental stewardship, community engagement, green workforce, all of this fits in very well what the ESG framework talks about. And of course, the collaborative efforts of government, corporates, academicians, investors, and civil society form the key for successful ESG implementation. I take this example from India, the National Clean Air Program, which was launched in 2019 by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. I want to share with all of you that this is a national program where all the academicians were kept in touch with the technical people, with the Pollution Control Board, policy makers to come up for the solutions for the clean air goals. And the academic network was made in 2019. So I represent from Jammu and Kashmir in this network. And this is the first time when through this network, we started working with the Pollution Control Board and with the municipal corporations and policymakers. Until now, we have come up with a very good ecosystem, which really speaks very high of the ESG framework in India. So then coming to mission life, of course, here also we talk about the national goals where we are committing to evolve and transform the Indian goals with the ESG framework. Sustainable development goals, when we talk about, so we are fitting very well when we talk of the cleaner goals and climate action. Of course, the SDG 13, and then SDG 3, good health and well-being. Then SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Gender equality, and of course, affordable and clean energy. Very quickly, as already have been said, the challenges are lack of awareness and understanding, regulatory gaps are there, cultural or institutional barriers, and capacity and expertise gaps are there. So what is the way forward? Filling the missing links, as already have been said by the speakers. As an academician, I feel that still we are not telling our students, we are not building the the next generation with the ESG frameworks. So we really need to imbibe those concepts with us, like we have adapted for sustainable development goals, for environmental sciences as one of the streams. So we really need to teach by breaking the barriers and filling the missing links. And of course, the industry-academia linkage is very, very important, which government is also promoting these days in India. And of course, the ground implementation, because I also want to congratulate the organizers to have this panel with expertise from diverse backgrounds. So ultimately, it is about filling the missing links and breaking the barriers. And for surely, we are going to fit very well in ESG framework. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for a wonderful presentation. I don't know whether we have someone with a mic here who will assist us with our questions, because the major concern really, thank you for your wonderful presentation, is that sometimes we have all these good frameworks on ESG, but there is no legal enforcement to push or nudge governments or authorities to comply with a certain frameworks or laws or regulations that govern that. So how do we deal, that's the main question, how do we deal with such kind of challenges? Because we can develop good policies, we can develop good regulations, frameworks, but as long as they are not legally binding or enforceable, sometimes we will just continue doing talks and but without direct impact, a positive impact to the current and the future generation as well. I'm just throwing this. Maybe you may attempt to answer it anyway. But let's give it to the floor for the sake of time to hear if there are any critical questions, whether you are directing it to a particular speaker or any of the speakers. And so I will ask our speakers to take note of these questions that are going to be raised by the floor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So my question is to Louisa. Like in the fast-moving world, we have very less time now. We just want
Voice
to go
projection says so that she can capture it as well.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So like in the fast-moving world where we have very less time, we go through social media and very quickly to understand the things, grab the information. What are the challenges you think that is required for building more awareness into the ESG sector? Is it like the timing is important, or team, or like disruptive ideas you think will increase more awareness in this field?
Thank you. You captured it. Let's just capture about 6 or so questions, then you will, so that we save time. Another question, please.
Hello, Borgar Ramos. I'm a climate scientist, so I found this very interesting. I have 2 questions. First one to company carrier. Net zero by 2050, very ambitious. So it's easy to reduce some with efficiency, but it's very difficult to go to zero. So how do you go to zero? Any secret plans? The other question is to Louisa on the political dimensions of science. Can you be a bit more concrete? Myself, I'm an academic, but I've also become a politician. When is it smart to blend, or when should we separate the different worlds, and when is it fine, and what should we as academics, as researchers do? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Third question.
Hello, I'm Aram, and I'm a social scientist. I have the first question to everyone. So the SDGs were adopted more than or about 20 years ago. I was wondering how, and they were very clear goals. I was wondering how AI has supported to achieve these goals even quicker, and whether it transformed the way how the goals will be met. And the second one, a couple of speakers thought about transparency and the building more trust with stakeholders. I would appreciate if you could name a couple of specific ways how this transparency is being approached. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Fourth. Is there any question?
Does this work? Yeah. I have a question for Shweta. Thinking about Western Europe, we've seen several cities recently where the mayors have outlawed certain types of cars, and the condition of the air is massively improved, which is really good. And they said they did it without democratic processes because the lobbies were too powerful. And normally 2 years afterwards, everyone's okay with this. But I wondered, when you're implementing projects like this, how do you deal with popular will, political persuasion, and then what's best for the planet? So coming from a behavioral aspect, how do we take people on this journey with us instead of against us?
Okay, thank you. The fifth one, I'd said 6, then we should be good to go.
Good evening all, this is a nice talk. I'm Rajalakshmi, I'm representing Atma Pranavayu, a startup run by me. So first question is like, we have MDGs which have not been addressed, that's why SDGs. So like, as Keith also said about it, when it is not legally binding, so that's the basic reason why like there are so many SDGs, but still we have the threshold and then going back, so 2030 and 2050, it's keep on coming. So that's one point I wanted to get some insights from you. And Dr. Shweta, I wanted to know about NCAP, or the program you said. I could see only the academic side. So are there any collaboration or any industries partnered for the NCAP program?
Okay, thank you. Final one.
Hi, I would ask, how do you make the awareness of SDG in a global context, but also locally relevant, because now we are talking about a zero net carbon emission, but now the production is moved more and more to the low and middle income countries and global south. So how will you balance with the global context and locally relevant? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. We will allow maybe a mic for our speakers so that they respond where they are seated. Is there a mic there? Yes, yeah. Who wants to start? No particular order.
Okay, I'll start then. So for the first question on science outreach, science communication, how can we decide what is the best strategy? I think now, as you mentioned, we are in the world of social media, so we need to use that in our favor. So I truly believe that doing science outreach using those tools is it's a good way of raising awareness also. So for that, we need to find people that are familiar with the social media, because not necessarily we will be those people, but when we can actually translate all the knowledge that we have and putting together with other types of knowledge, when we can translate that into a short video for a Reels on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, when we have that as a tool, using that in our favor, that is really, really impactful, and it can reach like people from everywhere. So from my experience on that, I do have a profile on Science Outreach on Instagram, and I have like people from different, it's in Portuguese, so it's mostly people from Brazil and countries that speak Portuguese that reach my profile. But I do have a good like outreach, and people come to me to ask about those topics, and it's a good strategy, but you need to be up to date into that. So it's a good strategy, but depends on how if you have time to do that, because it spends lots of time. But I do think it's a good strategy and it's a good way of using those tools. And the other question on political dimensions of science, when it's smart to blend and when we should separate it. So in my perspective, I think it's important, at least when, for example, you have a research question that is focused on like SDGs or focus on the challenges we have, it's important to have a previous communication so we can understand what are their expectations as well. When you reach them at the end of the project, at the end of the research study, not necessarily that will be important for them, because they do have other agendas. So you need to establish the communication first at the beginning, so you can dialogue about what is the best path that we should follow. This is a dialogue. It's not like they're asking us to do something or we telling them that we are doing this way. So this is important at the beginning, but also it's important to be like having a good timing for that, because if we take they are like decision makers are being doing like real fast because of the challenges, so they need responses, and if we get to them without those responses, they will not trust us. Basically, that's how it works. So we need to have this balance of communicating with them before, so we can align the goals and have a continued communication, so they can be up to date of what we are doing, and we can share the knowledge produced as fast as possible, considering their agendas. And when we should step back, well, we are all like most of you are scientists, and we know that sometimes our projects takes longer than expected, and I think this is the moment we should step back and focus on doing our research so we can actually have results that are important for them. If we keep like posting them, well, we are still working on that, that will make our relationship gets weak, because they will start not trusting us because they need results fast. So that's the moment to step back and focus on the research, and then we can come back with the results. Yeah, I think. And that also touch into the transparency with stakeholders. It's important to keep this transparency, but some details of how we do things in science might not be that relevant to be shared, not because we are hiding it, but just because they have other worries about like what they are doing. So when we share all the details, they will not absorb that this is not important for them, and we are just wasting their time and ours. So the transparency must be direct, talking about what we are doing, what we are expecting to reach, and the results we have. That's the transparency I think it's important for us to have.
Okay, thank you.
So there is no particular question directed to me. So I think maybe once you are done with your specific ones, should I then talk about a couple of them? Or can I just add to the question? Yeah, all right. So I'll just probably add to her response. I forgot your first question. I know you had two of them. The second one was about stakeholder engagement and transparency. I'll quickly add to what Luisa has already added. The first one was about SDGs, how AI has supported those SDGs. Yes. I'll first cover the stakeholder engagement. So for any business, corporate governance is the pillar. It doesn't matter how well you're performing on your environmental impact and societal impact if the society doesn't even trust you for what you're saying. If I claim today that I have planted 10,000 trees and you don't trust me and I have actually not done it, then there is no point. So the whole purpose of transparency is to make the doer accountable, and therefore probably publish it in a way which is relevant to that stakeholder. So the first step to take there in that space is identify your stakeholders, the internal as well as the external. Internal could be your employees, your maybe your board members and your management. Those are the internal stakeholders as an organization. And external could be maybe your investors or your partners, your vendors, your clients, your customers. These are your external stakeholders. Everybody who is interested in knowing about your business, and because their life in some way gets impacted because of what you're doing, they are a stakeholder. The media is a stakeholder. They are interested in publishing news about you. The government is a stakeholder because they are interested in knowing if you're following the regulations or not. So they are and all these interested people are stakeholders. Every stakeholder needs a certain kind of information. Like Lucia said, that there is certain kind of information we want to share because it's important for that kind of stakeholder. So develop a stakeholder engagement plan, know which stakeholder needs to know what topic, and engage them on those topics with those details, like newsletters, maybe social media, maybe emailers, maybe reports, annual reports, maybe impact assessment reports, sustainability reports. All of those are different forms of building transparency. Going back quickly to your question one, which is about AI. AI in itself is a very powerful tool, and I would say we can use it in any way, much like any other tools which have the power to do something good, and we can make it actually do something really bad. So AI is, in today's world, if you look at agri-tech, fintech, edtech, there are a lot of such areas, even space tech. Now, when I say space tech, it's not necessarily always about visiting Mars, but also about, looking at the weather, climate situation, helping the farmers with predictions, helping them understand what kind of seeds work well, looking at health tech, what kind of medicines work on what kind of genes. These are all the givings of AI, where I think it will really help us push a lot of SDGs forward, SDG 3 for healthcare, SDG 13 for climate action. So there are a lot of those areas where we can really leverage AI. Where it can go bad, it's our responsibility to build the guardrails and make sure it's ethical. And our source of power, if it goes green, then all this talk of so much of emissions, so much of power usage could probably be contained. So that's a short answer. And one quick response, I think Raj Lakshmi spoke about we have not even achieved MDGs, and now we're talking about SDGs. And one more person actually talked about SDG awareness in lower income countries, where how do you balance? So I'll just very, very quickly give the responses. Yes, we did not achieve any of the MDGs. We are likely going to miss all the SDGs by 2030, not a surprise. We are already sitting in 2025. Again, I repeat, look at the SDG index of every country and you will see where we stand. A lot of data is also missing. Having said that, I think it's something we have to keep putting up on the global priority. This is something for governments to talk about. Again, the stakeholder engagement. For SDGs to be really moving forward, it's not just one person and it's not just one country. Unfortunately, if I keep polluting, the other country is not going to be safe from climate change. So it's all the countries have to come together. Again, the matter of intent, putting the resources where it is required. We have enough money, enough technology solutions on this planet as of today to solve all our issues on SDGs. It's about intent if we can put them across there. And lower income countries, we've talked about regional differences. We are already in those transition risks where these countries forget about building them as manufacturing hub. There are countries, lower income countries where we still are using such power sources which are polluting in themselves, such labor practices which are not good. So we are already struggling. Now making them further, pressurize them with a lot of more manufacturing, it's going to push us further down on SDGs. But a lot of countries, much like India, we are now building a lot of these SDG awareness programs at school level, at college level, and then connecting them with industry and making sure that industry also takes up some responsibility of actually showing the real implementation of it. When you talk about waste management, when you talk about circular economy, in the classes, it's look good for theory, but how about we actually take them to an apparel company or a manufacturing unit and let them show how it really happens so that we actually understand how we can reduce the waste or reduce the emissions. So I think industry, academia, collaboration is very important for us to actually help the lower income countries build on SDG awareness. Yeah, that will be all from my end.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I'll take the question on career. On the net zero commitment, which is very aggressive. You can hear me, right? Yes. It is very aggressive. I think that's a tough target, and that's what career as an overall organization has decided and committed. I think I talked about we want to be a company which is responsible. I think that's where the whole thing started. And the first step, there are various hurdles. I'll talk about highly, how we are approaching, and we can get into the details as the need may be. I think first of all, the baselining is very important, and that's a very tedious task. Being an equipment company, serving various regions across the globe, having several dozen, products of various ranges with different operating envelopes, right? I think baselining of what our products contribution today, to the sustainability. And impacting the emissions, right? So that required a hell of a lot of work. That's a starting point. We do have a dedicated team which crunches all the data and all the stitches all the missing data, wherein wherever needed, the physics-based modeling and digital twin was leveraged to come out with understanding the baseline where we are. If we continue the same path, where we will be. I think that's a starting point in a tedious process, and we have crossed that. And that, kind of puts, once you put on the table, the whole way in which we approached is, how do we, what are all the hard decisions we need to take? What are the ways possible if you really want to commit? This is all I'm talking about before committing 2050, net zero as a commitment, right? What are the ways? And each way, requires several hard decisions. I think once we, so that option is not a, career alone's decision, right? We got to be partnering and collaborating transparently with our partners, the distributors, channel partners, and also the customers, because they are the ones taking your product to the end customer. And we are a business, so we got to keep an eye on our competition as well. Hey, what steps they are taking? I think with all those things, we have committed. But what are some of the hard decisions we are taking? I think to transform from one direction to another direction, right? It requires funding decisions of where do we want to invest and where we don't want to invest. It's a very easier said than done. But there are last couple of years there are aggressive decisions and shift happening with respect to, hey, we don't want to invest in the direction with the rationale of why. It is involves several layers of influencing and convincing internally as well as externally, and what is the benefit of investing in the other side by when some of those solutions and products will come and then hit the customers. So all those trade-offs and then investment decisions were made, and the sustainability is, as we speak, is part of the product and program decisions right from early on stage, at various levels. Is it really the product? So we always have the go no go decision at every stage gate to make sure that we are aligned towards our 2050 target. The last but not the least is about the capability. So you got to be definitely reskilling, upskilling. That's in a terminology used in the industry to make sure that hey, they're simply talking about electrification. It's a massive subject for a career as a company 5 years before, because we did not have enough capability. So how do you do that? Where do you invest from the standpoint of lab, infra, and then capability standpoint? Our president announced a couple of months before, we are investing $1 billion in the next 3 to 5 years, specifically targeted towards shifting all our products and solutions towards the net zero as a goal, right? So there's a lot of investments decisions are made, so that $1 billion is an investment and additional, but it kind of stops somewhere else where we don't want to invest as well. So careful decision in terms of investment decisions are made towards net zero as a goal is the focus of the company and the leadership. I think we are still in the early stage, but 2030 assessment is we will be comfortably be there well ahead. 2050 is another 2 decades to go, but we are iterating as a company every quarter over quarter just to make sure that we course correct and then move towards that goal.
Thank you for that elucid explanation.
Thank you.
Yes.
So very quickly, I want to answer Rajalakshmi your question. First is about National Clean Air Program. So in 2019, this memorandum of understanding was signed between Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Pollution Control Boards and the technical institutions from each state. And later on, urban local bodies were involved, but formally there is no consortium with the industry partners. But of course, when we are looking for the solutions, we are involving the industry partners in conferences and meetings. So this is one part. And then second question, I think you were having common, like how to have the community with you and how to, do the implementation part of it. So as I'm saying that the pan-India networks really work very well. And when we are talking of implementation, connecting with the society and the stakeholders, as ESG framework also says, that connecting to the society really helps, that we educate them, we reach out to them, and then we try to make them understand. And of course, when we talk of the clean air goals, it is much easier, because when we talk of climate goals, it is a wider picture and people are not able to understand the challenge. But about the clean air goals, waste management, clean energy and all, I think the more connect is there. Also, one more thing I want to add over here is connecting to youth is very helpful. That's what we are doing as the Indian National Young Academy of Science members also, that pan-India we are connecting to the youth, to the school students, trying to educate them for all of these clean air and climate goals, and it really helps in implementation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we still have about 5 minutes. I'll just allow any 2 additional questions before we wrap up our session. Are there any 2 additional, 1 or 2 burning questions from the floor? Someone help us with the mic, just last 2, and then we wrap up our session. Sorry, speakers, for putting you on the firing squad here. I hope we won't become enemies. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Hiba Baroud. I'm an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering and a GYA member. And my question is for Shweta, and it's a little bit maybe outside of what you presented. I'm interested in the financing of climate adaptation. So when you set these climate goals, I would be interested if you can give some information about India as a country, how they are approaching the financing of these climate goals and their relations with countries that are higher income. In this case, there's been a lot of talk about whether these finances are enough, whether there's requirement to obtain finances from higher income country to help lower income country, or is there enough financial strategies that are being generated in the country here? I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that.
Thank you so much. Hi, I think I'm not a right person to talk about the finances. So, but yeah, of course, there is a lot of global connect going on for climate financing. And as an academician, as I see it, because more linkage with the industry and more implementation of ESG framework when we are talking of BR, SR, and CSR and SSR activities, that is one thing which is going internally. But of course, with the higher income groups, countries, there is a lot of global connect going on and the climate financing is improving. But I don't have much to say on data on this. Thank you.
Okay, any other question? Are we good?
Okay, maybe I'll just quickly add to the response for maybe if that helps. See, in India, there are various levels of investments if you look at, and any investment, it doesn't matter India or globally, would depend on what is the driver for it. So whether it is SDGs, whether it is ESG, why do we need that sustainability and who needs it? That's the thing. We all need it, of course, but it's about the person who has the money in the pocket. Why would they invest? Whether it is government, whether it is an individual. So yes, it's a responsibility, but in India, if you look at it, you can see as multiple drivers. Number one, you could look at CSR, corporate social responsibility. So there are certain conditions for businesses that if businesses are doing more than this much profit or more than this much revenue, then they have to give 2% of their average revenue of last 3 years into the sustainability or social responsibility related aspects. Now here they take part in mostly environmental and societal aspects. Corporate governance don't really fall into it. The second would be investments, the venture capitalists even today. So the multilaterals, the development fund institutions, Asian Development Bank, International Finance Corporation, there are a lot of these big institutions. They have started to invest in venture capitalists who in turn invest into startups, where of course you can raise funds from such investors and adopt sustainable solutions or build sustainable solutions. Then there are green bonds and climate funds which are coming up. So there are specific climate funds, impact funds which are coming up. And then there are green bonds issued to work on specific green activities. So there are various sources. Coming to your question on, developed countries versus developing countries, there are commitments made on COP. I'm sure if you're following COP, we are all aware the fight is on. We haven't received that money. We haven't received a fraction of it, but we are hopeful. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe additionally, would you say climate financing is not a question of resources, but it's a question of a distribution problem. It's not a finance problem, but a distribution problem. What would you say concerning that statement?
Yes, I totally agree with you. So like we said, there is enough money, enough solutions. Distribution is the problem. But why is the distribution a problem? That's clearly because of the intent. If I have the money and if I am going to again invest in another e-commerce copy-paste solution instead of maybe a clean air solution, that's an intent I have because I'm seeing some returns come up in some way. So it's distribution, yes, but then the whole society has to work towards it, because if I'm going to prefer a sustainable product over a non-sustainable, the investor is automatically going to invest in a sustainable product. So it's like every individual has to work towards it so that the intent builds up. Only then the distribution
will start working. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, our speakers. Let's clap hands for them and for such a colorful and powerful. Clap hands for yourself for being good listeners as well. And clap hands for me for being your moderator as well. Thank you so much. This was such a very interesting conversation. I'm sure we can continue with the conversational intercourse after this session. Thank you so much. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for such wonderful moderation. Thank you, speakers, for enlightening talks, and thank you, audience, for such intriguing queries. So with this, I request all the moderator and speakers for one group photograph, if possible. So let's have one group photograph. After that, I request audience, we have quite good, exquisite stalls outside. I request you all to please pay a visit to them. It's a lot of work that has been invested in it, and they're wonderful. You would certainly get something out of it. So. There is a coffee break, so I request you all, if I'm sure that you are tired or maybe you need some refreshing break, so there are coffees and some tea available. Please get yourself comfortable with it. Thank you.